once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I have another book ranking video for you. Today talking about my top 10 Star Wars canon books. Now this is a video that recently I asked you guys for some video suggestions that you had, and this was one of them that I thought would be fun to do. And that's mainly, first of all, because I figured it's been a while since I've done a Star Wars book ranking, and so I figured I could do one, but also because I've never actually done a video dedicated to the canon books as far as a ranking goes. My first Star Wars ranking that I did on the channel was a Legends ranking, a top 5 Legends ranking. And then, not this last May, but May of last year, I did a top 10 Star Wars books in general, not, just canon or just Legends, everything. And so for this, I figured since I've never done a dedicated top canon books video, I would do one. Because my top 10 Star Wars books video, only a handful of those books were canon books, so I figured I could do a dedicated canon video. So before I get into the list, I do have a couple things to mention. First of all, I have not read a whole lot of the canon books, especially compared to the Legends books. I've read probably around 20 or 25 canon books in total, and there are, I think, 40 adult novels, and not even including young adult novels, which I include both of those in terms of how many I've read. And so there's plenty that I still have to read, so if there's something that's really amazing that is not on this list, there's a good chance I just haven't read it yet. So if there are any particular ones that you would highly recommend, I want to read every Star Wars book eventually, both canon and Legends. So if there are any that you would suggest that I prioritize, let me know in the comments if there are any of those that are not in this video. So without further ado, let's get started with the list. At number 10, I have Thrawn by Timothy Zahn. This is the first of the canon Thrawn trilogy books. Not the Thrawn Ascendancy books, but the regular old Thrawn books. The first canon trilogy, and it's a fantastic trilogy, and I love the first book a lot. I think there's a few things this book does very well. First of all, I really love the way it characterizes Thrawn. Thrawn in the original EU books was, he's a great character, obviously, but he's not one of those characters where I really was invested in him as a character. I was invested in him as a part of the story, if that makes sense. Like him being the foil to the main characters I always found very interesting, but I never found him super compelling himself as a person. And to me, that's what this book did, was made him an actually really interesting character, added a lot of personality to him, which I really enjoyed. Also does a great job of acting as Thrawn's origin story, which is very compelling with some very interesting characters, such as the fan favorite, whose name I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but his friend, Eli Vanto, that's it, who's become a fan favorite character, is a fantastic character. So, great book overall, would definitely recommend reading it. Next up at number 9, we have Shadow of the Sith by Adam Christopher. This is, to me, just a very fun book. And that's one of a few reasons, again, that it's on this list. First of all, it's a lot of fun. It's a fun adventure. To me, this book feels very similar to something like the Bantam era Star Wars books, just in terms of the kind of story it is, in the way that it's just kind of a fun adventure. It follows a few different characters. First of all, you have Lando and Luke, which is a fun combination, the two of them going on a mission together. You have Rey and Rey's parents, primarily, and you have Oki of Bestoon. So a lot of cool character stuff going on here. Get some really good backstory relating to the sequel trilogy, which I would recommend this book even if you're not a fan of the sequel trilogy. I mean, obviously, it's probably not going to change your mind on them if you're not a fan of them, but I think that this book does a great job of adding extra context to the sequels, especially The Rise of Skywalker. To me, this book feels very much like what something like Plagueis is to The Phantom Menace or to the prequel trilogy. This feels like it really adds a lot of context and enhances those movies in a very similar way to how Darth Plagueis does for the prequels. So great book all around, fun, really works as like a complement to the movies and things like that, and just does a really cool, has a really cool story, lots of fun to read. I had a great time with it. Next one up is going to be Thrawn Alliances, the second book of the canon Thrawn trilogy. It's an unpopular opinion, I know, but I do prefer this book over the first, and it is my favorite of the Canon Thrawn books, and not only that, but probably my favorite Thrawn book in general at the moment. I just had a great time with this book. I know, again, not the popular opinion necessarily, but I just really enjoyed it. The things that I liked about this book were, first of all, the dual narrative. You have a one in the Clone Wars timeline, one in the kind of original trilogy Rebels kind of timeline, where you have in the Clone Wars timeline you have Vader and Anakin and Thrawn and Padme on a mission together, and then you have in the kind of present day kind of Imperial era you have Anakin. I'm messing the names up, something awful. You have Vader and Thrawn going on a mission together. So you have both of these same characters, plus Padme in the Clone Wars. But really the core characters of Thrawn and Anakin / Vader. These two characters going on a mission together on the same planet at very different points in their lives. And I thought that the back and forth between those was very interesting, and I think the book did a good job of balancing them in a way where neither one felt like it was underutilized, which I really appreciated. I loved the character work. I loved the interactions between these two main characters in both timelines. And I just think it was a lot of fun in general. Maybe not as strong in like overall, I think, as the first Thrawn book, maybe, but this is one that I just personally liked a little better because I really liked a lot of the stuff that it did. Then number 7 is a book that I kind of wish I could have higher, but it is one that I think is deserving of its placement, and that is Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. This is the first of the High Republic novels, and it is also one that is very special for me because it's the book that got me back into reading as an adult. This is a fantastic start to the High Republic. Lots of characters, lots of stuff going on. Just feels very much like an excellent beginning chapter to this story. Introduces a lot of characters that I love and a lot of ideas that I love, things with the Nile and the Jedi during the period of the High Republic era in general. Just does a great job of introducing a bunch of new stuff in a way that feels approachable and fun and exciting, and is just a great book on its own as well. So for all those reasons, I put it here at number 7. Number 6 on my list is gonna go to Leia, Princess of Alderaan by Claudia Gray. Claudia Gray always delivers great Star Wars books. This is not the last time you're gonna be seeing her on this list. But she does some great work, and this is one of my favorite books of hers. Great young adult novel focusing primarily on Leia. Excellent book for the characterization of Leia. If you're interested in Leia kind of during the earlier portions of her life, kind of leading into A New Hope, this is a great one to check out. Really well done with like the politics of the Imperial era and things like that, and just a fun read, I think. I just had a really good time with it, and again, it's Claudia Gray, you know it's going to be good. So that one is at number 6. Number 5 is going to go to another High Republic book. In fact, the next 2 placements are High Republic books and my favorite of the bunch, and that is going to go to The Rising Storm by Kevin Scott, the second of the Phase 1 books, the Phase 1 adult books. This is a fantastic follow-up to The Light of the Jedi, and a great book on its own as well. This is a book that does a lot of things. You know, it does the character work really well, it does the plot really well, but one of my favorite things about this book is the usage of tension. You have the first half of the book is kind of building up to this big moment, and then the back half of the book is just all kinds of stuff happening. Like there's this big moment that happens, and then everything from there just kind of goes absolutely crazy. And it's amazingly done and has an incredible ending that to this day is still one of the most impactful endings in any book that I've ever read. Just had my jaw on the floor, just absolutely loved the ending of this book, and absolutely love this book in general. It's amazing. It is maybe, I think, better done than the book that I'm going to be talking about next, but the next one is my personal favorite of the 2. Then at number 4 is gonna be The Fallen Star, again the follow-up to the preceding book, The Rising Storm. This is an excellent finale to Phase 1 of the High Republic. I absolutely love this one. It feels climactic and big and Great character work as well. I think this is one where the character work especially shines for me in Phase 1. And I really enjoyed a lot of the stuff that was going on with that in this book. Just felt very emotional. Like, there's some very emotional moments in this book for me. Love even some of the kind of subtle horror elements to it, with the Nameless, which is something that I really love in the High Republic in general, but especially in this book. And in general, just did a great job capping off the end of Phase 1 of the High Republic. I know that within the High Republic fandom, it seems that this one tends to be more of a least favorite, at least for Phase 1. But to me, this book totally worked, and I loved it a lot. And I would say The Rising Storm, in general, is maybe a little better, like better written, better constructed, that kind of thing. But this one is my personal favorite of the two. Then at number 3, we have Lords of the Sith by Paul S. Kemp. This is also one that I kind of wish I could have a little higher, but my top 2 are just amazing. This is a fantastic book about Vader and Palpatine going to Ryloth to crush the rebellion that is brewing there. This is one that I reread earlier this year, as is another one later in the list, and is an excellent book for getting the relationship between Vader and Palpatine. They are both done very well in this book, and their characters are very well portrayed, and their relationship in this book is very interesting. I love the way that this kind of delves into Vader as well, into Vader's psyche, and you see the way that the events of his life have impacted him all these years later. You have Cham Syndulla and the freedom fighters on Ryloth, which is very interesting. You have a few Imperial characters that I really enjoyed, and the way that all of those characters kind of weave together into one really cohesive feeling whole is very well done. This is also just a really, really fun book to read. I had a blast with it, and would definitely recommend checking this one out as well. Then number 2, my final 2 books. As stated earlier, Claudia Gray is an amazing author when it comes to her Star Wars books. At least I haven't read any of her other work, but I'm sure her other work is great as well. But my last 2 books on this list are both Claudia Gray books. And so number 2 is going to go to Lost Stars. Lost Stars is a surprising book to me, is the way I would describe it, because it's a romance set in Star Wars. Now, romance tends to not be my kind of thing. I'm not against it, and I can enjoy it from time to time, but it tends to not be my preferred genre or type of story. But I think the way that it's done in this book is fantastic. You have 2 childhood friends who grow up together on the same planet, end up both enlisting in the Imperial Academy during the time of the Empire, and then subsequently end up on opposing sides of the Galactic Civil War, where you have one of them who defects to the rebellion and one of them who remains a loyal Imperial, which is super cool, a super interesting idea. They cross paths at a few different points, and these 2 characters who are deeply in love with one another ending up on complete opposite sides of a war is just a very interesting idea. And I also love the way that this book portrays the events of the original trilogy. You get to see all the major events portrayed not from the perspective of the heroes, but from the perspective of the regular pilots, which I really enjoyed. And also seeing it from different perspectives. You get to see, for example, the destruction of Alderaan from the perspective of both the rebels and the Empire. You get to see, the Battle of Hoth from both perspectives. You get to see the Battle of Endor from both perspectives. You get even into a little bit of not necessarily sequel era stuff, but stuff post Return of the Jedi, like the Battle of Jakku, which is really cool. And this is just a fantastic, fantastic book. Excellent character work, really interesting story, and just a fantastic book in general. One of Claudia Gray's best, but not my personal favorite of hers, which is going to be number 1, and that is Bloodline. This was one of my favorite books that I read last year, and so it still is at the top of my favorite canon books. This everything that Princess of Alderaan did, I think this does a very good job pairing with Princess of Alderaan, but everything that book did, just apply it to this book, make it a bit better, and you have Bloodline. Fantastic work with Leia later in her life, kind of 5-10 years before the sequel trilogy, somewhere in there, and her kind of trying to become a person with a leadership role within the New Republic. And the politics in this book are fantastically done, very interesting. I tend to not think of politics in books as being the most compelling thing in the world to me, but I think it was excellently done in this book. Leia's characterization at her time in her life, at this time in her life, was fantastically done. And there is a certain twist in this book, which is kind of part of the marketing, so you may be aware of what it is, but I'm not going to say it just because I think if you don't know it going in, then it is very impactful, because that's how it was for me. And the twist in this book that happens is fantastic, and I loved it, and the way that it changed the trajectory of Leia's life and things like that. Just a fantastic book in general. Claudia Gray, again, amazing author, and this to me is her best work. And would definitely recommend reading this one as well if you're a fan of Leia, if you're a fan of the sequel trilogy, if you're interested in that in-between time between episodes 6 and 7, whatever it may be, definitely would recommend checking this one out. So that pretty much wraps up my list. Let me know in the comments what you thought of it, if you have read any of these books, if you agreed with my placements, or if you have your own list that is different from mine. Let me know in the comments. And again, if there are any amazing Star Wars canon books that I did not mention in this list, leave those in the comments as well. Of course, I'm planning to read all of them eventually, or at least as many as I can. But if you have any that you think I should especially keep my eye out for, let me know in the comments. So that's pretty much it for this video, so thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.